Here's the problem. Mortal Kombat is a franchise that has been around for more than 30 years. It's been around longer than some of us have been alive. It's obviously hard to maintain a single cohesive story for that long, so MK has had several different incarnations, storylines, and timelines. It also doesn't help that NRS loves timelines the way your grandma loves sex toys, so instead of having one timeline with a continuous story that flows for quite a few titles, then maybe reboot the franchise once, rebooting became NRS's new hobby. So instead of 2 timelines, we now have 3. 4 if you count the MK vs. DC crap, 5 if you see the younger versions of the characters from MK11 as its own timeline, and at the rate things are going, we're probably gonna have 6 real soon. How do you end up like this? Street Fighter's been around way longer than MK, and it still has one timeline with the same old Ryu and Chun-Li and the Hulk and Harley Quinn equivalents and Indian Mr. Fantastic. Yeah, but Street Fighter doesn't have much of a story. That's a fair point. Even so, it's your responsibility as a company to preserve the legacy of your IP as best you can, to help it last through the ages, and gain new fans without them having a warped impression of what this setting and characters are all about. I mean, what can you even say when one of the biggest companies in the world is setting probably the worst example of all in this regard? A senile octogenarian with Alzheimer's would know more about legacy than Disney. The fact of the matter is you have all these different story threads from all these different incarnations of Mortal Kombat that left you with different fan bases that you're now forced to try to cater to simultaneously. And you can't cater to them simultaneously because they hate each other. 3D era fans hate NRS fans hate the pretentious 2D era fans, and 2D era fans hate everyone. Am I a 3D era game? No one cares. Gameplay wise, it's even worse. The fan base is splintered into smaller, isolated communities. MK9 fans, MKX fans, M1K fans, 3D era fans, OG fans, and there's not a lot of crossover between them. I'll often hear from people saying that MK9 was the best MK game and everything else sucks, or how this other game is the best and everything else sucks. And so when NRS releases a new MK game, it sells well because every one of these sub-communities buys it, hoping it's like their favorite MK game, and then quickly fall off it when it turns out it isn't. It's part of what gets you this high sales, low satisfaction relationship that the franchise and its fans currently have. And this is a hole that Mortal Kombat more or less dug for itself over time by always drastically changing things from one installment to the next, sometimes randomly. You accrue a lot of people who liked you for this one version of MK, but now you're doing a radically different version of it, which racks up a bunch of newer fans who will then be disappointed when you radically change things up again in the next game, etc, etc. It's like a content creator that keeps switching up their content too often and ends up with a bunch of dead subs for it. It's the blank slate game design philosophy that they like so much, insisting on all sorts of changes for the sake of changes from game to game, which creates more and more fragments to the community that only like that particular vertical slice of MK, and then they have beef with fans of older slices, and the cycle continues in perpetuity. Scorpion Spear has always been back 1. Well, what if it was back forward 1 this time around? Why? Because it's the illusion of novelty, which they correctly identified sells well, but also leaves you with this fragmented customer base that's then impossible to manage. If they continue to be so fragmented, these civilized people, they'll eat each other. I mean, to me, MK11 and MK12 are the same bucket of slop, but I've heard plenty MK11 fans complain that M1K is too different and vice versa. That's how granular it goes. So it is in the story department. Let's make a storyline. Let's end the storyline. I'm sick of it. Let's make a new storyline. Let's kill everybody. End the storyline? No, we continue the storyline. Okay, this isn't working. Let's do another timeline, which is about timelines. Add more timelines on the DLC. Profit. No need to thank us. We wouldn't hear it anyway from our ivory tower full of money. There are people out there who just played MK12. Think about that. The only version of Scorpion they have ever known is this. This fan will stumble onto a conversation about Kuai Liang and go, oh yeah, I love Scorpion, and then get himself turbo bullied, the poor fuck. People who think Liu Kang was always a god, Raiden was always a peasant, Tanya was always Jay-Z. How do you release a Mortal Kombat game that everyone likes? You can't. If the new game continues the M1K slop, OG fans hate it. If you suddenly discontinue the new slop, new fans hate it and will be confused. The one thing you can do is pull a Days of Future Past. In the X-Men film franchise, Days of Future Past was a movie that combined 2 different incarnations of X-Men films. Because they had a similar situation to MK. There was an older set of movies with one cast, and then essentially a rebooted movie with a younger cast. And Days of Future Past was like, what if we treat the reboot as a prequel? It's a period piece set in the past anyway, so it should fit seamlessly, and it kinda did. In the director's own words, Days of Future Past became an in-betweequel. It pioneered something that it doesn't get much credit for. No one had ever tried to slap two different timelines together like that. Not only that, but the movie also somehow managed to be a satisfying unofficial finale for both incarnations at the same time. And considering the brain cell murder that was released afterwards, I think I'll stick to considering DOFP as the canon ending, thank you very much. A similar thing could happen to Mortal Kombat. If you play your cards right, you could unite the disparate fan bases together under one roof without them tar and feathering each other. All this started with MK9, where Raiden sent a telepathic message to his past self, therefore derailing the history of Mortal Kombat for the worse. Now, if Raiden can change the timeline, it stands to reason others can too. What if, over the course of a single game, presumably MK13, you explore the bizarre, multi-dimensional Chaos Realm and realize that the timeline's been messed with more times than anyone thought, and the characters basically see all the different incarnations of MK. The first MK all the way to Deception, MK9 to MK11, MK12, and the big reveal is that Armageddon itself was also tampering with the timeline. The battle for Armageddon should never have been a thing, just like the game itself should have never been a thing. So the race is on to send another time message back to some time after Deception before Armageddon to try and keep events from being tampered with, as well as to figure out who's the culprit who tried to change things and provoke Armageddon in the first place. You can either send messages to past selves, or maybe fully transport yourself there since the cryptic messages didn't go so well last time. And because of some problems that occur, only a small team gets to go back, endgame style. Maybe they're attacked right when they want to send themselves back, maybe there's some limitations with the time travel itself, but either way, you have a small team who get to try and change things. And you can have a lot of fun with the various versions of the characters. M1K Scorpion could see who the original Scorpion was, what happened to him, and feel sorry for him. Reptile could see how his counterpart was used and abused and turned into a Naga's vessel and feel pity for him, but also rage for his alternate self allowing a tyrant to rise up and endanger the realms. A lot of them could have misgivings about doing this, but after studying the timelines thoroughly, it becomes apparent that there's something about that one point in that one timeline that's critical for the future of the realms, and everyone's hopeful that if they can fix that and undo any tampering, this will all be worth it. But the most heavy-hearted one is Liu Kang, because going back to that timeline means that he is dead and his corpse is reanimated as a zombie, and that's quite a long way to fall, from being a god to being a martyred loser. In fact, I think he should be the one to spearhead the mission back in time. This is his timeline after all, his era. It's his responsibility to set things right, and it's in line with his selfless character. Now, of course, you could also play it a little dirtier and reveal that he knew all this all along, but didn't share any of it because he wasn't keen on going back to being dead. But he eventually realized how wrong and selfish that is and decides to make amends, which is a cute reveal and a bit of character growth, but just might be the kind of questionable out-of-character writing that ends up on the cutting room floor. Anyway, all of this would synergize nicely with the remasters they're releasing, or have released by the time you're watching this, and would add even more incentive to newer fans to explore the older games out of curiosity and become the wizened experts in useless lore just like the rest of us. And in the climax, it turns out it's Delia who was the secret final boss all along, who manipulated Argus behind the scenes and wanted the realms to burn out of spite for something tragic from her past. Not only does this give you the opportunity to revisit a pretty neglected character and flesh her out more, but she'd also make for a pretty unique endgame boss, being a sorceress consort of the gods, and a woman at that, so she's in line with the psychotic DEI guidelines too. And over the course of the game, because it's a time travel affair, you can afford to have another MK9 Sindel moment where you fucking kill everybody before going back in time. If people want gore, give them gore. Apocalypse now, women and children last, not even the fucking squirrels are safe. Everyone fucking dies. In fact, you could take this opportunity to bring Order Realm into the fold, since they're the one realm that has yet to be explored to any degree. Have them invade the other realms and kill everybody, or maybe challenge Earthrealm or Outworld to a Mortal Kombat tournament and kill everybody. And that prompts the desperate time quest where you go back in time, you have some fun adventures and interactions with past versions of characters, you find Delia, you stop her before she incites Armageddon, because think about it, she provoked the whole thing. If she and Argus hadn't built the fucking pyramid and created Blaze, there would be no big battle of Armageddon, no grand power to attain to attract everyone like a moth to the flame. So this is not even a retcon, she is the bad guy in this whole mess. And then you beat her up and you set up a true, worthy sequel to Deception. This way you give the MK1 and Done fans a continuation of what they like, and you also don't step on their toes too much when you hack their timeline away from them, because if they truly like MK1 too many timelines, then retcons and multiverse shenanigans are their fucking way of life. You do all that while simultaneously giving 3D and 2D era fans something to look forward to, almost like healing trauma from their childhoods. And you end up with all fan bases in the same place, following the same story. It's beautiful, brings a tear to my eye, does wonders for the brand going forward. And of course you market all this expertly well. You provide hints, clues, kappa feels that tantalize, entice, promise the fact that you'll explore the past, honor it, and pay it forward, so that even the most jaded haters will at least be curious to find out if there's anything worthwhile there. And there's plenty other ways you can skin this cow or milk this cat, or however the saying goes. But the bottom line is, at some point, you'll have to do something like this. The classic versions of many of these characters are icons, etched into the public consciousness, and if you don't revisit them eventually, you'll lose 2/3 of your fan base, or just cycle through increasingly thinner, fair-weather fan bases out to enjoy the flavor of the month and fuck off. Batman and Spider-Man go through many different iterations, but they always return to ground zero, because they're indelible. They're modern myths we come back to time and again, and it's the same with Scorpion and Sub-Zero. There, I entertained the idea of timelines and MK. I feel dirty.